Well, welcome to Success Secrets and Stories. I'm your host, John Wandolowski, and today we're going to have a presentation for our story series, Author to Author. We get a chance to discuss with the author their motivation and approach to writing the book and on their subject that is near and dear to their hearts. Today, I'd like to introduce Dr. Fletcher, and she has done an amazing amount of work. And there's an interesting story of how that work was generated. Dr. Fletcher, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be on your platform. Um,
Sure.
I'm just real excited about these books and the story that it's telling, really painting a picture of what's going on in the schools right now.
So you had a way of writing, and you told me a little bit before we had a chance to fire up the website
Mhm.
that you started with an academic book and then you moved into more of a storytelling book. Maybe we can talk about that process a little bit, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've been teaching for a very, very long time. I just retired in May, and that made 47 years.
Wow.
47 years, and 40 of that was in the classroom, all grade levels. And the last 7 was training teachers how to deal with the behaviors that they were seeing in the classroom that was allowing the kids to take over and the teachers not able to teach. So basically, I grew up like these kids. I've always taught in Title I schools, which means underprivileged area. And so I can relate to what the kids are feeling and how they're feeling. And so I kind of feel like that gave me an edge up um, growing up. I could see myself in these kids. I also had I think I have the sixth sense of when I was teaching. I believe God would say, that's the one for you this year. That's the one. You always point out a kid that would need extra, would need me. And so that kept me going. I was excited to get up and go to work every day and see these kids because you never know what's going to happen. So
Right.
anyway, during the pandemic, I saw a lot of teachers burning out. We were all scared. We
Yes.
didn't know what was going on and stuff. And so we had to learn technology, which all of that to teach kids while they were at home. And at that time, I was not in the classroom, but I was counseling. And so I just saw it. And then I started really seeing the teachers. When we came back and the kids came back into the classroom, it was a whole different view and environment. And I could see that the teachers were burned out. I could see that the teachers had given up. I could see that the fire in their eyes was going,
Yeah.
it was dimming.
Yeah.
And so my first book was to empower teachers, to ignite the fire back again, because I really believe teaching is a calling. And when we have that fire inside of us and we want to see those kids, it's going to show and they're going to feel it. And so I could see that the fire was going out. So I wrote that book to encourage teachers who were feeling burnout. I had a whole section on self care. I also gave techniques and steps on how to manage your classroom. But then I noticed that teachers really didn't know themselves. So I've been doing a lot of studies on mindfulness. And so the next textbook that I wrote was about mindfulness for teachers. Use strategies, be an example, show the kids how to handle their emotions because you're handling your emotions. And I saw a lot of teachers like, get out, and stuff like that when kids act up. Kids gonna act
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But you can't let them see your triggers. You can't let them see that they know how to get you and push your buttons, because that's when they're going to come every day doing that. And so I wrote that one. And I even had bonuses, like a whole year's worth of journaling. So you can try my techniques and then go at the end of the day and write down, did you meet that challenge, or did that kid get on your nerves? How are you feeling? So I was trying to get teachers to connect to themselves, because once you know yourself, then you can understand your surroundings. And nobody bought the book. Nobody, was reading the book. And so then I said, okay, everybody's reading. Teachers do read, In the summers, that's all I do is read, read, read. And so I decided, instead of going for nonfiction, teaching strategies, they don't want to be taught like that. So I said, let me change it around and do a fiction book. And the characters still going to be the students that we see, the problems that we have, the issues as adults, but this time it's going to be more like a mystery or suspense or whatever. And then they can see all the strategies that they've been using in the classroom. They're going to see it in the book. And so that's how Whispers of the Ancestors got started. And it's a 5-book series. And right now, 3 are out. The 4th one is almost finished. And they're going to be excited. It's a good read. And it ended up being a mystery even for me. I would wake up and say, "Oh, wow, let's do a turn on it. Let's do a spin on it. Something they didn't see coming." And so I started writing it from that angle.
So one of the comments you just made, I thought was very deja vu for me because my daughter is a teacher, and she made a wonderful statement that, Dad, this is my calling. This isn't my career. I'm not doing this for the amount of money I can make. I'm doing it to help people.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
hear that in what you've done, but you've done 4 different applications. The mindful way to teach, the mindful way of teaching, and then you did something to make it the story, the whispers of the ancestors. And that's the transition that you're making into the concept, right?
Right.
And now,
Absolutely.
am I getting it that there might be another book in this series?
Yes. Yes.
See?
There's going to be 5.
Oh wow, there'll be 5. Outstanding. And maybe talk about how your novel is now going to try to help that teaching process and maybe get the teachers to pick up the book, which is a great
Yeah.
idea. How's the transition to a wonderful idea of the whisper of the ancestors?
Yes. Well, one thing I can say is that more people are getting the book now, simply because I'm talking about the problems that we're having in schools, and they know the problems. And so when you can read and see an example of what you go through every day, you're more likely to want to see how it ends. My characters, I always get a kid. The very first book was about a kid that was in a gang, and restorative. I use restorative works. We use restorative practice circles. The teachers, when I got that training and started having to train a whole school building, they were very resistant. I don't have time to be sitting in a circle letting kids tell me how they feel, but you don't have time to break up fights either. You don't have time to try to get
Right,
them to do what they need to do. So
right,
let's just give 5 minutes to this first thing in the morning so you can get a feel, a pulse for where they are. Because when they walk in, you can tell if they've had a bad day. You can tell if they're hungry. You can tell if they're mad. You can see it on their face. But you got to be
yeah.
standing at the door ready to greet them so that you can see it instead of trying to get your lesson plans together. We have to be prepared. So what I try to do is show examples in the book of Eugenia, who is me, ready, prepared, ready to meet, ready to greet, with a smile. No, you might be feeling pretty bad yourself, but no, you're gonna give them a smile because those kids are with you more than they're with anybody. And so they need a hero. They need a champion. They need somebody who they can lean on and trust, because kids go through a lot of things. And what I tell teachers when I'm doing training is, when kids come in the classroom, they have a book bag, but you would be surprised what's in that book bag. It's not just books. It's the weight of the world and things that's going on. The kids
Sure.
don't know how to handle. And so they need somebody that they can trust, and somebody who treats them like, with respect. We want respect, the kids want respect. And so those are the kind of little nuggets I try to put in the book, give examples, and show how if you just go the extra mile, you can save a child.
And the other part you talked about in your book was how you brought some fun and some humor and to help that process. It's a long day, and you're
Mhm.
trying to engage, and encouraging that sense of that connection. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Okay, yes, because I actually wrote a book, but I didn't even put it out there because nobody bought the other ones. But it was about laughing and loving through teaching. Because we got to have the sense of humor. We have to laugh at our own selves because we make mistakes too. We get there and work a algebra formula that we hadn't done in a long time, and it's all the way wrong. You got to come back and say, "Hey, kids, you know what? Dr. Fletcher told you that all wrong. Oh, me. I'm gonna have to go and practice more on this algebra, or whatever it is."
Sure.
Laugh at yourself. Don't take everything so seriously, and the big one is don't hold a grudge because kids come in and they mad and they may say something to you. Let it roll off of your back because they don't really mean it. They're just angry about something, and you're the first person in their way. And so, the next day, don't say, "Oh, I remember when he called me this and that." No, no. Let's say, "Good morning. I
Yeah.
hope you have a great day today," and just give them some positive instead of negative.
Also, it's an awesome way of trying to create that environment so that they can learn. Curiosity question: in terms of writing in books and influences that you have been exposed to, what is your favorite author and your favorite subject when you get a chance to read yourself?
Um, Probably, well, the one every summer I read the Left Behind series
Oh,
because I am
wow.
a Christian and it gives me hope and it strengthens me to roll through the next year. It's like 13 books, but it's so good. It's so good. And it gives me, and sometimes I even grab the Bible and try to line it up with that series. But the author that gives me the most is probably Patricia Jennings. She
Okay.
does a lot of mindfulness. As a matter of fact, she kind of founded it, and she goes out and that's all she talks about and teaches, and she teaches teachers how to become mindful. And so I like her, and I read her every chance I get, and go to any training that she's giving.
Well, that was the other line that I always get a tickle out of. A teacher's always learning. There's
Yes,
never that end point. You're
that's
always
right.
challenging yourself to learn.
Correct. We're
And I think
lifelong learners.
and I think you're trying to help uh, the teachers themselves with this series on having that step back moment and being able to maybe turn the ship when it's going the wrong way.
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
So 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 when they turn the ship is when a kid comes in there and they're mad and you can see it, but what do you do? So I give you examples of what to do and how to make them feel heard or make them feel seen without challenging them, giving them a little bit of space to be able to calm down and then talk to them. So I do that a lot in the book because my kids, the kids that's in the whispers, they all have issues. They're in low income areas. They all have things going on, and so they bring it in the classroom with them. And so I'm showing teachers by example what to do because I'm sure every kid that I have in these books, you had one of those kids in your classroom.
sure. And I think you also went and gave examples of doing a one-on-one teaching moment as well as a group teaching moment,
Hmm.
and you were giving some insights to those two different approaches. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Well, one is number one, the mindfulness series. I give you some step by steps of things that you can do to identify your issues because we all have them. We're human,
Right.
and how to work on that. Um, so the mindfulness part, that's where that's coming in at. And then in the first book that I had teaching strategies for letting kids calm down, you calming down, and then talking to them. The other one is restorative practice, restorative circles. When you first thing in the morning, you get the whole group and how was your day, or you ask a question, what are your goals for today, or something that first of all you can gauge how they're feeling and how the day is going to go, And if you see that it's not going to go so well, you can pivot and turn it and and interact with that kid and make his day go better. He can start over. And they see a lot of that in the examples that I give. I have a lot of kids that's in the book, in the different books that they just going through things. Like the one that wanted to was in a gang because everybody in the neighborhood was in a gang, but he wanted to get out because he actually had a good heart, but he didn't know how to get out. But the teacher knew he was struggling, and she saw the emotions in him. She saw him with the hood up, not want to interact with anybody. And so I use that as an example of when she would call a circle, or when she talked to him one on one, or when she would make him feel heard or seen. And I would make him just look at her like, okay, what you got up? You're not like a regular teacher. You really care about me or what? Those are the kind of examples that are in the book that the teachers are going to grab hold to. They're going to see it. And parents, they see the difference when I get calls and say, "What did you do to my child?" This is a different kid. He's not
Yeah.
getting suspended. He's not fighting. He wants to talk. And I tell them, and we even had circles for parents. Almost, let me train you how to talk to your kid, because teenagers, it's hard to talk to teenagers. They lock
Yes.
everything in. And so you got to be able, not trying to just be their friend, because parents are parents. I'm not trying to be your best friend, but there's a
Right.
way to work with them and talk to them and make them feel heard, even though you're the parent. So I do
Yep.
some of that too. And I have parents in the stories as well, getting engaged with the school.
And I think that's the interesting part of the book and the book concept. You're showing that in a storyline now, and you're showing the
Hmm.
interaction with the family to the teacher, and showing that it's a dynamic that's happening. Uh, I think you touched on it earlier. COVID changed the teaching world a little bit, and it was a shock to the system to see how much negative, how much it was holding them back and isolating them, and how it affected now not usually a small group, the 20% or 10%. We're talking about 40, 50% have been affected by that
Hmm.
kind of culture, or the lack of culture, I should
Hmm.
say. And you talk about it both in your technical book and also into your storyline, your novel line. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how that transpired in your story.
Well, the main reason I put that in is because some of the issues in school, some of the the laws that the politicians put in place for kids, um, they had, or we still have, zero tolerance. So kids were getting suspended, and
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that going to do? What is teaching them? What is that teaching them? Nothing but to hang out in the street. So you actually putting them out there for the streets to get them, for the gangs to get them.
Yeah.
So that's where restorative practice came in place instead of suspending or expelling, which drew me to the pipeline, the prison pipeline, which
Yeah.
is a big deal. And people put their heads down. They don't want to talk about it. But when you suspend kids, when they turn 16, they drop out, they hang out in the street. Next thing you know, they're in the juvenile justice system. Before you know it, they're in the penitentiary. And they're not learning on the streets. So if they can't read by third grade, they actually decide how many more prisons and beds they need to make, because statistics will tell them that if this kid can't read by third grade or fourth grade, he'll be in the system with us. And that's money. And that is true. And that is real. And I need to get the word out. And I need people to know that suspending, even parents, if they suspend your child for 5 days, why? What one day can do it. So we started doing restorative practices instead of suspension. We started teaching them. We had a program called Why Try. Why try to stay in school? Why try to get along with people? Why try to be a good person? That's
Yeah.
what kids will say. But then you teach them, because some kids, especially in Title I schools, they don't know, because they haven't been taught how to apologize. They haven't been taught how to communicate without fighting. They haven't been taught. They've been taught in the street. In the street, you disrespected me. You looked at me the wrong way, and this. So we're gonna fight. So
Yeah.
we had to teach this kind of stuff to the kids, and then we look statistically, it was changing them. Just teaching them that skill of communication and getting along, conflict resolution became really, really big. And some of the things that the storyline shows is that we have to listen to the kids, that we have to look at the kids, we have to know who's in our classroom. And even some of the stuff that we're seeing nowadays with the shootings and all of that, if we look at our kids, if we see somebody's in trouble, if we see somebody's being bullied, if we see, you know the feel of your classroom, you know the
Yeah.
feel of your kids, then you can intercede some kind of way. You can talk to that kid, or you can start calling home and saying, is he a little different? He seems like he's depressed. He seems like he's sad. And another thing is trauma. We don't even address trauma. When they came back from the pandemic, those kids were in trauma. They lost grandparents, moms, dads, sisters, brothers. A lot of people lost a lot of people, and we gave them no counseling. We
Yeah.
just said, get back in here and open the book. So kids dealing with trauma, they're angry. And when they're angry, they lash out. And when they lash out, they get suspended. And that doesn't make any sense. So that's the reason for these books.
No, it's so much on the mark, and it is so important. One of the things for the books that I have been dealing with in a business kind of environment, there's a common theme that it doesn't matter whether it's teaching, whether it's business, whatever application, it's communication, and it's being able to teach them active listening. And that's something that you also touched on is the skill of listening and giving them your attention, and you're giving a little bit of yourself to be their sounding board, to be there, that voice that they've been missing, and having a chance to ask questions that maybe they don't want to ask in a classroom environment. They want to talk
Yes,
into a person about a
yes.
question that they're really challenged with. And you did a very good job of talking about that in your storyline. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Well, probably each one of the books in the fictional books, each one had a purpose, a theme, um, and so in the last, I think it's three out now. It was always things of being expelled, being harassed, black and brown boys being kicked out for the same infraction someone who wasn't black or brown got to stay in school. Those are
Yeah.
the kinds of things. And then always letting them know, I see you. You're not invisible. I see you. I
Right.
hear you. I'm listening. I'm here. When you need to talk, I'm here. Let them know you're available. And those are the kinds of examples I try to put in there, because teachers, they get overwhelmed, first of all, because they got a ton of things to do,
Right.
and then a faculty meeting to go to, and then they have a family. They have, when they leave, and it's hard to leave that stuff there. You take that stuff home with you sometimes, and
Yep.
so that's why I had a section in there about self care, because you can't pour from an empty vessel. You got to stay filled up as well.
So true. So true. And that whole part of being um, careful on your own approaches. I can tell you the one magical part about teaching, and I've had a very small experience, is when you actually have helped someone and you can see that spark of taking that next step. And that
Yes.
gives you the strength to do more. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's the part that you're touching on too, is that spark of teaching, that joy of teaching, those kind of
Yes.
moments in time where you want to make that happen more often. And I
Hmm.
think as you're creating your storyline, you're trying to create that story of how that happens.
Hmm. Hmm. Instead of just using it in a textbook and say, these are the strategies, do this, and this, I'm doing it in a storyline where you actually see it come out to play, and you can see yourself in it. You can, and this book is not just for teachers, but I started it for teachers because I'm a teacher. I'm an educator,
Right.
and I know I had to do some changing. I had to soul search, and then come forward to be the warrior. And teachers, they're advocates for kids. Anybody who has a passion for this, they're advocate for kids. And so
Yeah.
they're going to go the extra mile. I mean, we didn't make that much, but we always buy books and pencils and all kinds of supplies for kids because we knew that they needed them. Or sometimes, like I had a refrigerator in my room, and the kids who were hungry, that I already had them trained how to ease in, go in there, fix your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, ease out when you're full. The cafeteria would give me the milk and stuff, and that's the kind of things you need to do. That's how you develop that relationship with kids. You have to have a relationship with kids. Kids don't learn from people they don't like. They don't even want to come in your classroom. But if you have a
Yeah.
relationship with them, then it's a whole different story.
Um, I'm inspired. Having an opportunity to talk to you. You can tell the passion that you've had teaching, and continuing that wonderful work with your books. I think that's awesome. Uh, so you've done both a technical book. You've done now this series. You've also done something to help lose weight, which I think is kind of fun. You created a calendar approach to losing weight and help people to encourage a journal mentality. Maybe you can talk about that a little
Hmm.
bit.
Okay, well, that was during my 254 pounds. And the doctor's like, you got the and I was trying everything, and then I said, this is God's vessel, and so let me turn it over to Him, and let me just hold His hand and ask Him to help me. And that's what I did. And I was going through, and I said, well, let me write this down. So I would just write it down as a journal every day, and then I'd find a
Sure.
scripture every day. And because I like to write, I like journaling, and a lot of people journal, a lot of teachers journal. And so I said, well, let me just, and that's what I did. Have a little count on there with how much water you drinking, and I lost 34 pounds.
That's
And
outstanding.
I believe it's because God was giving me the strength not to go eat those chocolate chip cookies.
I'm asking for his strength to keep from doing it myself. So, um, so when we're talking about authoring and doing these different books, there are so many different characters. How did you develop your characters that you used in the book?
From my students, from my experiences for 47 years.
Sure.
Some of the teachers, yeah, I use my characters all came from actual incidents, problems, struggles. And the main one was when I helped the kid get out of the game. And so he was my first, that was the first book, and he was my first project
Sure.
to get him out. So it's all my characters are people that even the names, of course I changed the names, even the schools, I changed the schools, but it's always
Right.
depicted as an inner school, with income levels very low, hopelessness, defeat, low grades, failing grades, low self esteem, and then pick
Sure.
them up, build them up, love them where they are, meet them where they are, and then transition them over, and they'll change. They'll change.
It's like talking to a master class on teaching because it you have such a wealth of knowledge, and I am really excited to know that you're looking at ways to try to extend that knowledge and giving other generations some of the benefits of the things that you have learned. Um,
Yes.
the probably the most important part is that you are part of that fabric of the child's life,
Mm-hmm.
and you aren't just a shadow that's part of your experience. You're actually engaged, and
Mm-hmm.
you are awesome.
Oh, thank you.
So
But
let's talk about
sorry.
your book specifically. You have which books available on? I think it's Amazon, correct?
Right. On Amazon right now, I have the Christian book for weight loss, and then I have Empowering Teachers. That was the first one that I wrote to try to those teachers who are burning out, to give them the
Sure.
fire back and give them strategies for managing the classroom. And then I did the mindfulness, which is on Amazon. If you just type in my name, Dr. Eugenia Fletcher, all the books will come up. And then because those academic books were not selling, I said, now I gotta flip it because, I guess teachers don't want to learn right now. They want to, but I know what I do in the summer is read. So I said, okay, so I'm gonna flip it, and I'm gonna make this a series, and I'm going to deal with the political part of what I see going on in the schools, but I'm
Sure.
going to make it like a mystery because people like romance novels or mysteries. And so I
Right.
said, okay, I can fix that. And so
I
that's
can
what
do
I did.
that.
And so I think I have three out there right now of Whispers of the Ancestors. And
Okay.
also, even that title, Whispers of the Ancestors, and then the subtitle is whatever issue I'm dealing with, politically, what I'm dealing with. And because we all have ancestors and we all look at our history, we look at our granddad or great granddad, what they did, their
Right.
struggles, or
Right.
how they championed over, the good and the bad, and that's what make us who we are. The people that
Yeah.
we are is our strength from our ancestors. So that's how I picked the title.
That's awesome. And you also have a website?
I do. It is author drfletcher.com.
Okay. So Amazon website. Um, it's really been a pleasure talking to you. Is there any other thoughts that you would have as we're closing?
Well, I would encourage teachers, if they're listening to this interview, to start writing. Because actually, if you think about it, all the
Right.
things you see in the classroom, you either laugh at it, and you could write a whole series of you can't believe this happened today. Or you
So
could,
true.
use your experience, use the things that you've learned to help somebody else. Help the new teacher, give her some strategies, tell her the shortcut so she won't have to find out the hard way. So I
Very
would
true.
say things like that. If you see this one, read it. You will love it. It's funny, it's exciting. I have all kinds of twists and turns you wasn't expecting, and you'll just kick back and enjoy the summer.
Awesome. Awesome. So, Dr. Fletcher, it has been an honor, and I appreciate your time. Um,
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
yeah, it's awesome. Well, that's a wrap for our episode on our series, Author to Author. I hope you've enjoyed us diving into the creative writing process. I hope to talk to all of you someday in your efforts to tell a story and writing a book. So, until next time, keep reading, keep writing, and keep sharing those stories. See you soon.